Hi, I'm John Edward, and you're watching Noise 11.
And we welcome into noise11.com. John Edward back in Australia, and a big tour coming up later in the year. How many times has this been? 3 or 4 now?
I think we're higher than that. I started coming in 2003.
Wow.
So, I'm excited to return.
Oh,
any excuse to get down here.
Seasoned traveller. Yeah, and always down here at a good time too. Just as it's starting to get a bit warm, a bit of entertainment and fun and fiestas happening around Australia when you get down here too. So there'll be a few things to see other than, people seeing you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be good. It's, I'm just trying to think of the year, 1998 was when you wrote a book, and from that came a Larry King appearance.
Correct.
Was that the start of the career for television?
For television, no, it actually started a little bit before that. Well, that was the mainstream television. That was the national, breakout, kind of like I'm being internationally on TV, was Larry King. I'd done some morning show stuff here or there, and I live in New York, but my media career actually started in Miami. I had done radio in Miami, and then I was put on television in Miami. And I remember being very nervous about it, and a friend of mine who was in New York said to me, listen, if you suck, who's going to see it? Like, if you totally tank out, you can't, do it on TV, or if you get too nervous and you can't make sentences come out, nobody's going to know about it. It's pre-social media. But it went really well, and then I kept getting invited back. So I kind of got my feet wet in the Miami area, and then I started doing stuff in New York, and then Larry King happened.
Right, because you weren't initially doing it as an entertainer, were you?
I'm still not doing it as an entertainer. I started, at 15, just doing readings, and it was people talking, and by word of mouth, it kind of just grew, and I'm trying to figure out where to put them. And then I started doing groups, and then from the groups, I recognized that I needed to get a message across as far as what it was that I was doing. So when I wrote the book, and then by nature of trying to get a book published, the publicist, they've got to run a business and they want to sell books, so then you find out that you have to do media in order to let people know that there is a book. And I was always comfortable in radio, they wanted me on TV, and that was kind of how the dynamic started. And then I encountered producers who said, would you ever do your own show? And I said, yeah. I said, I'd like to do a national radio show. I'd love to be able to do radio. And they were like, no, not radio, TV. And I was like, no, I don't do TV, I do radio. And they said, well, would you give us 6 months to see if we can get a show together? And I said, yeah, but we'll wind up on radio. Next thing you know, I was doing a pilot for Crossing Over. Crossing Over was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and that went, so it was it just kind of just trickled. But it wasn't like I planned it.
And suddenly you're on TV, people start noticing you in the street, don't they?
They did. But it was funny, because it was like, I know you, but they didn't know where they knew me from. What I found was that people recognized my voice more than my face.
Is that right?
So I did a lot of radio.
Maybe you should have done radio. Yeah.
I did a lot of radio, so because of that, I would be either in a supermarket. I remember once being in a pharmacy in Long Island, and I heard the person say, "No way!" And then all of a sudden I was like, "Uh-oh, here it comes!" And then 2 women came running around the aisle. They're like, "I knew that was you! I listened to you on PLJ."
Yeah. So do people come up with unusual requests when they recognize you in the street?
No, actually, it's really, I'm very blessed. It's very nice. They usually come up and say thank you for doing what you do, or your book really helped me, or you have no idea, Crossing Over saved my life when I lost my son. I mean, that's the stuff that I normally get. And then it'll be seasoned at the end, but a little bit are you getting anything? You see anything? You feel anything now? I'm like, no, I'm shopping. But thank you for asking.
Yeah. But you didn't start off as a believer, did you? You were
No.
quite a skeptic as a kid.
Yeah, I still am a skeptic.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I just did an interview today, and somebody said, I need to be really clear with you. I'm skeptical and a little bit ignorant about what you do. And I said, that's great. We're going to get along well. I'm skeptical and enlightened. We'll meet in the middle. And I am skeptical and enlightened. And I think everybody should be skeptical and shoot for being enlightened, because that makes you empowered. Information raises your awareness. Awareness leads you to action. That leads to discovery, and we have to explore our possibilities. And I think cynicism is what people look at as being what skepticism really is, and it's really not. They're two different things. So I think it's important to be skeptical.
What was the turning point for you then?
The turning point for me was in 1987. The turning point in me becoming a believer? Oh, having a reading. A woman by the name of Lydia Clark did a reading for me, and I went to debunk her. And she came out with stuff that was just impossible for her to know unless I would have told her myself. So once you get past the whole she read your mind thing, stuff started happening that she predicted. And you can't read somebody's mind if the events haven't happened yet, because then it's not in your mind for her to read. I had to pay attention to it and go, well, she got something going on, and she told me I had a disability. So I'm a control freak. I like to control everything, and I didn't like the feeling of her walking through my life and knowing stuff. So I wanted to understand it. And I went to the local public library, and I was embarrassed to check the books out, because at that time it was all in the occult section. So I sat on the floor of the Glen Cove Public Library and read every book that they had after high school. And what I did was I learned that metaphysics, parapsychology, the occult, psychic phenomena, supernatural, all whatever you want to call it, now they call it New Age, is something we're all connected to. I just happened to be connected to it in a much larger way, and now I wanted to tap into it. And that's what my turning point was, having that reading.
Is it because people are ignorant, or is it just that people haven't learnt, like at one point everyone thought the world was flat?
Right.
So are you just a bit more advanced than the average guy on the street?
I don't want to say it like that. I think I've put the work in. Like, we all have muscles in our body. But why don't we all have bodybuilder muscles? We don't put the work in the gym to get that physically fit. But when you see somebody walking on the street, male or female, who have that body, there's nobody watching or listening to this who's not going to go, they haven't gone to the place of going, wow, what do they eat? Right? Like, how often do they work out? Like, they put the time and energy in to develop that body, to make those muscles. I've just done that. I've just put the time in to develop my psychic muscles so that I can actually use them and become stronger with them. But I think we all have intuition. Maybe not to the point that they can enter a competition and that they can do it for other people, but to the point that they can actually make their own intuition stronger.
When you do a reading, it seems when we're watching it on television that you're being spoken to in clues.
Symbols.
It's symbols.
Yeah, it's like symbols for me.
So it's never a blunt answer to tell somebody what's going on?
Well, I think that's what they are. For me, that's what they are coming out with. They're coming out with what I call evidence or validation to let you know that it's actually them. It's to support that they're with us, that they love us, that they're connected to us, but I think it's important to look at the information and know who you're talking to. So for me, I think I've been accused of being too blunt, or sometimes too factual, and not what's the word? The LA Times said I wasn't warm and fuzzy, that I happened to be like a New York City cab driver who was psychic. But my goal is to give information, not to give a feeling. So I think it is that, but it does come through in symbology, my life, my fragments of experiences, and I got to figure out what it means. Not always accurately, but I always leave the client with what it is that I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling.
Does it work on you? Can you read yourself?
You can, but you don't have the same objectivity that you do for, like, if I'm sitting with a stranger and I see something, like, I have no connection to it. I just be like, I'm seeing that, and that's what it is. But when you for yourself, now you have to kind of go, well, what if I don't want that? Maybe it's this. So it's really hard to be objective. It's like a doctor trying to operate on themselves. If you really, really want clarity or objectivity, sometimes you have to go to somebody else to ask their opinion on it. See if it correlates with what you're feeling or what you're getting.
I guess, the average person always wants to know about famous people. Do famous people come through any clearer than just man on the street?
No, not at all. I mean, I've made a few connections with people who have crossed over who are famous, and they're just people. No velvet ropes on the other side, no red carpets. No, it's just the role that they played when they were here. It's part of their experience. No different.
Who's the most famous person that's come through?
I could say this only because she talks about it publicly, but I read a woman by the name of May Pang. And
John Lennon.
Right. John Lennon came through. But he came through to me as John, the guy that was shot. I was like, you were connected to a John who was shot? And she's like, nodded. I go, there's like fame around him in some way. And she was like, yeah. And then I went on to other stuff in the reading. It was a brief little snippet in the experience. And then at the end of the session, she's like, do you want to know who you were talking about? And I was like, sure. And she's like, John Lennon. And I'm like, as in the Beatles? And she's like, yeah. And I had this moment of like, oh. And then I went to, I think, where anybody else who would have been listening to that reading is, gee, I would have thought there would have been something a little more, about that. But there wasn't. Because there were other people in her family who showed up, and there were other normal, regular things. So I sit back and, people can Google that because she's online and she's talked about it. I wrote about it in one of my books.
The show you do now is, I guess, more like the cross-country show than the crossing over show, isn't it?
No, it's actually more like crossing over.
Yeah?
Plus, what I'm doing online. I do an online show called Evolve, and it's kind of like my buzzword. I feel like for the first part of my career, I was building bridges to the other side. So my newsletter at that time was called Bridges. And then I did crossing over because I feel like that's what I was doing. And now I'm all about the word evolve. I want people to evolve in their lives with kind of like what I've experienced for the last 3 decades and say, okay, like, yes, I can talk to grandma on the other side, but wait a minute. In addition to talking to grandma, let's look at your life and the energy and your choices and understanding what opportunities are in front of you, and if you raise your intuition and you listen to that voice and you recognize you have a team and use all that, you can make empowered decisions. That's kind of important. So it's like crossing over live with Evolve in it.
Mm. So what do we expect out of the show for November?
Expect a lot of readings, a lot of questions being answered for the folks that are there, and tools for life, like insights that come through during the course of the reading. So not just, I'm reading that person over there, and now for the next 15 minutes somebody's going to take a snooze or go to the bathroom because they don't care about that person. It's using that person as a teaching tool so that anybody in the room can understand why it's important that that person's coming through and how it can affect you, even though I'm not talking to you.
Mm-hmm. You've performed in America, in Australia. Australian audiences are very reserved. Does that make it harder for you?
No, I love Australia. I love Australian audiences. I don't find them reserved. I find the UK audiences reserved. But I love coming here because I feel like there's just for me, energetically, I have an Australian heart, or I have an Australian soul in some way. I don't know if I had past lives here. I love it here. I love the energy here. I love connecting with the folks here. And I look forward to coming here. This is the only place I really come here to do media. You know, I'll look for an excuse to come on down just to kind of experience it because I like the energy.
Do you watch TV shows like The Mentalist?
I don't watch a lot of TV. I binge watch TV, so I'll watch through shows. You know, now I'm on Game of Thrones, so it's like I'll power through shows. Breaking Bad, but I haven't watched The Mentalist.
What about any shows that you've watched where you actually go, yeah, they're actually pretty spot on with what you do?
Not a lot. I mean, Ghost, the movie, and that was just a Hollywoodized version of it. The one scene in The Sixth Sense when the little kid is talking to his mom in the car, and you don't see anything, but he's relaying to his mom that his grandmother had come through and gave him information. That was probably one of the most spot on, I think, depictions of what this is. It's very subtle. In Hollywood and TV, they glamorize it, or they make it something that's more what they think it should be, stereotypical, or woo-woo, or spooky, or haunted. And by comparison, it's kind of subtle and boring, but powerful and important.
In Ghost, the Whoopi Goldberg character or the Patrick Swayze character are you talking about?
The Whoopi Goldberg character is the medium, and her abilities to be able to get the information. I think that was pretty spot on. But
she really had to drag it out. There's one scene where there's a whole lot of people hovering around it. Do you have that crowded situation?
I do. I definitely think there's a whole bunch of spirits from Jersey waiting to come through, as she says in the movie. But no, there's a definite queue, we'll call it, right? Here you say the word line up, it would be a queue. There's definitely a queue of energies that are waiting their turn to kind of come through. And I always say I can get to as many people as people can allow if they know their family and friends when I'm sitting in front of them.
You've been asked to appear on numerous shows over the years. I think Will and Grace was one. When Crossing Over went off the air, one of the producers that I have known for a long time, she goes, will you please come on and play yourself? And I said, I don't think I could do that. And she's like, why? I go, I can't act. And she goes, it's okay. She goes, well, I just want you to be you. And she goes, what could you do? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, give me a scenario. What's going on now? I said, I'm doing book signing. She's like, perfect. So I wrote that episode where here I am in the bookstore doing, my big line was, who do I write this out to? Which is what I would say in a book signing. And I remember during the day, I'm going to forget his name, I think it's James L. Brooks was the director, or whatever, the big Hollywood guy. He was this voice in the darkness, and after we went through the rehearsal day, I was like sitting at the desk, which was the set, and all I hear this booming voice say is, you're really good at what you do. And I went, thank you. And then he paused and he goes, because you sure as shit can't act. And I cracked up laughing, and I was like, thank you again. It was a fun experience. Yeah. Well, so now you've got something in common with Bob Dylan, because Bob Dylan also appeared in Will and Grace.
Very cool.
Very good.
It was an awesome experience. It was kind of like fun because I was a huge fan of the show, so to kind of be able to do that was kind of cool.
What was Family Guy all about?
Family Guy, they actually asked me to voice myself in Family Guy. I think I pierced that pop cultural veil where people knew who I am, or knew I was at the time, so it became an easy, quick pot shot, or like the one-liner, or the whatever. So Family Guy was cool. South Park, not so much. South Park became the the one that I still get to, this day, where it was the, I don't know what the right name is, but if I can say it, can I say it?
Yeah.
Where they like deem me the biggest douche of the universe. So it's like to this day, every day I get like 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds when I watch this, go to Facebook. It's like, ha, they write that in. But when you pierce the pop cultural veil, you know you've got your message across. Because they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't try to parody you if people would get the humor.
Yeah, I guess if you get name checked on South Park, good or bad.
Good or bad, it means something.
It does.
I would prefer the not having it. You know, it didn't bother me, but now I have a son that's almost 12. So it's like he's of that age. It's like, okay, so here we have to have the conversation, and people are like, you know, you talking about like sex and porn? I'm like, no, I'm talking about South Park. You know, it's like we have to talk about that because it's not cool when, you know, kids his age are gonna snicker behind his back about his dad's quote unquote TV name. But you know, it raises a dialogue and a conversation, so I'll take the opportunity as a platform.
Is it part of a gene? Does it get passed on to the kids? Like, do your kids become psychic?
No, they definitely have. I jokingly call it the freak gene, and they definitely have it. It's definitely been passed down. I'm not training them to be psychic. I'm training them to be aware, but that will develop their abilities. So it's kind of like I'm developing their abilities to be aware, but not to do readings, but yet to be intuitive. So yeah, it definitely. It's like speaking the language. If you know their mom's family is Portuguese, they hear Portuguese, they speak Portuguese. I speak energy. They're going to speak energy.
Well, they'll do the opposite of whatever you do when they grow up anyway. They'll probably become lawyers.
No, they'll
really embarrass you.
They'll be lawyers, but they'll be psychic lawyers. They'll be using intuition in the courtroom.
There's a plot for a TV show.
Has to be. They can't. You know, it's like there's no opportunity. I mean, it's a language that we speak in house, so it is what they would. They're going to grow up knowing it. No different.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you back down in Australia, and
it's good seeing you again as well.
I've seen John's show, and I can assure you that people might say things out there, but the people that go along to the show feel very comfortable, and I guess they you see the look on people's faces. They come out with positive thoughts, don't they?
They do, and my goal is to leave people better than I find them.
Yeah.
So I do it every time I step foot in doing a reading or an event or a seminar. It's my goal.
Yeah. John Edward here at Noise 11.
Thank you.